Welcome back to the Dargslan Linux series. This is part 5, and today we're talking about identity. Every action on a Linux system traces back to a simple question: who is doing it? Over the next few minutes, we'll unpack how Linux answers that, through users, groups, and the quiet little numbers behind them that decide who you are, who you trust, and what you're allowed to do. Here's the path we'll take. We'll start with what a Linux user actually is under the hood. Spoiler, it's a number. Then we'll read the files where that identity lives, etc. passwd and etc. shadow. From there, we'll create and remove users, look at how groups tie people together, cover passwords and account locking, and finish with the quiet system accounts like www data that keep services running but never log in. So let's start with that first idea. A user is really just a number. When you type your username, that's just a friendly label. The kernel only ever sees your UID. Run the ID command and Linux tells you exactly who you are. Your UID, your primary group ID, and every other group you belong to. And there's a convention worth remembering. 0 is root, the all-powerful superuser. 1 through 999 is reserved for system accounts that run services in the background. And anything from 1,000 up. That's where real humans like you live. So where do those numbers actually live? Every user on the system is recorded as a single line in etc. passwd. Plain text, 7 fields, separated by colons. Take Laszlo here. The username you log in with, NX. Where the password used to sit before it moved to gas extruas or shadow, then the UID and primary GID, a full name for humans, the home directory you land in, and finally the shell that greets you. One line, everything the system needs to know about you. And that X is the clue. The actual password hashes were moved out of etser passwd because that file has to stay world-readable. Every tool from ls to ps reads it just to turn UIDs back into names. The hashes now live next door in etc. shadow, which is mode 640, and readable only by root. Same idea, split in two. Public identity on one side, secrets on the other. And you never edit shadow by hand. Let passwd or change do it for you so the formatting stays correct. So how do those entries get created in the first place? On Debian and Ubuntu, you'll usually reach for adduser. It's a friendly wrapper that walks you through setting a password, a full name, and creates the home directory for you. Everywhere else, and in any script, useradd is the tool. It's silent by design. You tell it exactly what you want with flags. -m to make the home directory, -s to pick the shell, and then you set the password separately with passwd. Same end result, different style. Once a user exists, usermod is how you change almost anything about them. The one detail worth burning into memory. When you're adding someone to a group, always use -ag together. The -a means append. Without it, -g silently replaces every secondary group they had, which is a classic way to lock someone out of sudo by accident. And when it's time to remove an account, userdel on its own leaves the home directory behind. Add -r to clean that up too. Which brings us to groups. The mechanism that keeps permissions sane when you have more than a handful of users. Every account has one primary group, set at creation time, and it's what new files belong to by default. On top of that, a user can belong to many secondary groups. Sudo to administer the system, Docker to run containers, www data to touch web files. To see your own memberships, just type groups. Add a username to inspect someone else's. And group add and group del do exactly what they sound like. A handful of groups show up on practically every Linux system, and it's worth knowing them by name. Sudo, or wheel if you're on RHEL or Fedora, is the gateway to administrative power. ADM gives you read access to logs without handing over root. Docker is convenient but effectively root equivalent, so add members deliberately. www data is what Apache and Nginx run as, and users is a historical catch-all you'll occasionally still bump into. From groups, we move to the other half of authentication, passwords. Running passwd on its own changes your own. It'll ask for the current one, then the new one twice. With sudo, you can set a password for someone else, like Maria. The flags are where it gets useful. -L locks an account, -U unlocks it, and -E expires the password so the user must change it at next login. And when you need aging policies, expiry dates, warning windows, that's Chage's job, with Chage-L showing you the current settings. Now, here's something worth pausing on. Most users on a Linux system aren't people at all. They're services. When you install PostgreSQL, you get a Postgres user. Install Apache, you get www data. Each one runs in its own little box with no shell and no password, so if an attacker breaks in through the web server, they're stuck as www data. They don't get the keys to the whole machine. That isolation is the whole point. So if services live in their own boxes, how do you step into someone else's? There are 3 common ways. Maria gives you a full login as Maria, but you need her password. Sudo, Maria does the same thing using your password instead, much more common in the real world. And sudo Maria, followed by a command, just runs that one thing as her, without opening a whole new shell. When you're done, type exit. Don't leave another user's shell sitting open behind you. Let's tie all of this together with 3 workflows you'll actually run. Onboarding a developer is 3 steps. Create the account, add her to the right groups, sudo and docker, say. Then hand over a temporary password she'll change on first login. A shared team folder needs its own group, the right members added, and that magic 2770 on the directory so the setgid bit keeps new files owned by the group. And offboarding. Lock the account first, audit what she owned, then delete cleanly with userdel-r lock before you delete. Always. Now, before you go off and run these commands, let me save you some pain. 3 classic mistakes. First, usermod. G without the flag wipes out every other group the user belonged to. Sudo ADM gone in an instant. Always append with AG. Second, never hand edit, etc. passwd or, etc. shadow. 1 missing colon and nobody logs in. Use the tools, useradd, passwd, VIPW. They enforce the format for you. And third, don't hand out sudo like candy. Every sudo user is effectively root, so keep that group small and deliberate. So let's pull this all together. 5 things to carry with you from part 5. Users are really just numbers. The UID is what the kernel actually trusts. Everything lives in 2 files, etc. passwd and etc. shadow, and you let the tools edit them, never your fingers. Always use AG when adding someone to a group, or you'll lock out an admin. And system users exist for a reason. They keep a compromised service from becoming a compromised machine. And that wraps part 5. 5 down, 19 to go. Up next, we shift from who is running things to what is running. Part 6 covers processes and resources, piece, top, 8 top, and kill. Finding what's eating your memory and shutting it down cleanly when you need to. I'll see you there.